It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Welcome in to Take Command. I'm Craig Hoffman. That is Logan Paulsen. Yikes, man. They had it. They had it. I know the officiating is going to be a huge topic of conversation today, but there are so many opportunities that the Commanders let go last night as they fall to the Giants 20-12 in a heartbreaker where, let's admit, the officiating wasn't good, but Logan, there's so much more to talk about. You and I actually haven't talked about this game at all as we record this at 8:30 the morning after. I certainly have thoughts, but I want to let you lead this, man. Like, if you try to figure out what went wrong, why they lose, what comes immediately to mind?
Yeah, so I think a couple things, high level things here. One thing is that I thought that Scott kind of took the bye week and said, "Look what Philly did. Look what Philly did with their guard tackle pull system, the zone read stuff." And he said, "This is how we're going to attack this defense." And I just kind of felt like, we've talked about this before in terms of game plan approach and kind of putting in game plan specific runs. You lose a little bit of dexterity with that kind of stuff. You say, "Okay, we are expecting this look. We're expecting them to do this." And when they don't do that, you don't have the responses. So, like, for example, on the first drive of the game, they run a duo play and the Giants bring a run pressure. And so the defensive end chins the tight end. It looks like there's nowhere to go, but the back knows how to run it. The O-line knows how to account for it. Ends up being a 5-yard gain. And on these kind of like little zone read, GT kind of things they ran, I think they ran 4 or 5 of them in the first quarter, maybe the first half. They just didn't have the responses. So you end up in like a 2nd and 10, 2nd 11, 2nd 12 situation. And I thought that really stymied the offense. And I think we talked about this. Like, the one thing we wanted to see was the offense mature from a play pass standpoint, right? And then you see that on their first drive coming out of halftime, right? It's a play pass, boot, run, play pass, and it's a touchdown or whatever it was. I forget how the drive ended. But to me, that is what you're looking for. That the development of that stuff, the development of stuff that you're good at, as opposed to saying, let's adopt what Philly did and try to make it ours. And I understand there's some merit to that, and so there's some value there. When I look at it, I thought, man, that's really what slowed them down in the first half, kind of got them out of an offensive rhythm. And then in the second half, they kind of became the team that we saw against the Giants with the play action pass, the running game. And I just was like, man, like, this is that was a big point of frustration for me. And I don't want to say that was the only thing, but offensively, that's something that really stood out to me early on.
Yeah, during the game last night, someone tweeted me and was like, "Man, Scott Turner sucks. Can we just say it?" And I was like, "No," because Scott Turner, I think, had a really good plan and the players aren't executing it. And as I was going to bed last night, thinking back on the game with the result being final, I went, you know what? I'm gonna probably back off of that. I actually don't agree with my initial assessment, because while there were plays there and there were opportunities to be had, and ultimately I think this game comes down to a couple of key things, including the fact that the Giants made every key play and the Commanders didn't. They exactly what you said. They just got away from them. And there's a point in this game where, like, it was 46 plays in, I know, because I checked at that point, where Robinson only had 10 carries still. And it's like, for as well as he's going, he averaged 7.4 a carry on the night.
With
he had
not
12 carries.
With not like a big run in there. I think that's the thing. It's like,
right, his long was 19.
It's not like he had a big clip. It's like he earned every single one of those yards. And I totally agree, man. I think they just kind of, like, I look back at the first 2 drives, right? Kind of your first 15, first 25, first scripted plays. And it's it's 4 plays of GT trying to get the ball to Curtis Samuel, which I don't hate. I don't like getting them the ball in that situation with something you haven't repped. And it's a lot of drop back passing stuff, very limited play action. They've been doing a great job with, like, this hard play action sell, this downhill duo, this play action off a counter, these runs that they're very, very good at. And they're kind of back to this kind of offset gun token fake. And that's just really not who they've been. And they haven't been successful there. And I felt like Scott kind of said, okay, I don't know if he's trying to subvert expectations or he's trying to lean into what Philly did or whatever it was. But I just felt like, especially the first half, it just didn't go the way that he thought it was going to go. And I look at the second half and I'm like, man, if they had just done this, a version of this the whole time, I think you're in a better spot. I really do. I think that is who this team is. And the thing that got me excited about the second half was, like, they had added wrinkles off the play pass that we had been asking for that, right? And I hate to kind of say like this confirmation bias thing, but the offense looked better in my opinion, right? Because
Yeah.
they know the solutions. They can protect. That was the other thing. You can protect better in those looks. And
Well,
for an
that
offensive
was the
line,
thing
go
that
ahead.
killed them. Yeah, I mean, sorry, it's just like the thing that killed them was penalties, and a huge part of the penalties were holding calls and things that happen when you haven't rep stuff / you get put in the toughest situations you can as an O line, and their inability to protect drop back pass, I think, was the biggest factor in the game.
Huge factor. And I also think, obviously there was that kind of, I don't want to say it was a phantom holding call on Lucas because it actually, if you go back and watch the L22, it's a legitimate holding call, right? So it
Yeah,
takes a Gibson run that goes for 12, and then it puts you back to 2nd and 18, and the next play is the Kayvon Thibodeau sack. So, and that's the other thing, let's talk about the officiating real quick because like I had a long conversation with my producer uh, last night about it, and he was all in an uproar about the call. So if you watch down to down, if I'm the New York Giants and I lose this game, I say, man, they missed a defensive PI on a critical 3rd down that they didn't get called. They missed probably 4 or 5 holding calls, right? That didn't get called. And so I think everyone kind of says,
they
oh my
also
gosh.
they miscalled the Heinicke fumble that might have been a scoop and score.
Right.
Like
Right.
Washington got lucky
And
on that one.
then yeah, and so I think people forget that like it's as much as people want to say like there's a bias here, like it's
Yeah,
kind
the
of like
officiating was bad.
it's kind of like the weather, It's bad weather, it's bad officiating, and both sides had calls that were missed or calls that weren't made or whatever it was. And so, like Evan Neal has a holding call that's kind of really ticky tack that gets him into a 2nd and 12 situation. You know what I'm saying? Like there's calls like that throughout the game. And so, people are saying, oh, the officials this, the officials that, like that it's part of the game. And I think if you look at the down to down stuff, A, there's penalties everywhere. B, there's opportunities everywhere for this team to win this football game
Yes.
and
Yes.
ultimately lose the football game.
Yeah, I mean, are the calls that everyone's mad about bad calls? Yeah, the 2-point conversion coming off the board is so heinous because the DB is the one who initiates the contact. Like you can't call offensive pass interference, and Terry McCauley who's refereed a couple of Super Bowls, is on the NBC broadcast going, he's in a blocking posture. No, he's not. Jahan is running.
So
and the DB, like, is he trying to set a pick? Yes. But he also is entitled to space and to run a route. And if he's running a route and the DB happens to run into him, is it designed for traffic? Yes, but traffic in itself is not illegal.
Right.
And that's, so it's just a terrible call. The lack of PI against Curtis on the last play is horrendous.
Yeah, that was bad.
But you want to know what? And I know everyone's super mad at the ref for calling or for being like, hey, Terry double checked. Terry's got to line up right.
He does. I mean, like because there's a couple things that he did wrong there. One, he's way off the ball, and you can tell Terry knows. He looks. I'm sure you just watched it, right, Craig?
Yeah.
So he looks to the sideline. He knows he's off. He kind of points to the official. He's too far off. So what they tell you is like sometimes if you point and say I'm the on player here, they'll let you slide. The thing that Terry does that I think is is the main issue here is that as the receiver's in motion, Terry is trying to slowly work his way up to the line of scrimmage, which is also a penalty, right? So if he says okay, give you the okay, stop it. Just stop moving right there and live to play another down. Hopefully he won't call it. It's the subsequent movement. I think that the ref's just like, I gotta call something here because you're off the ball too far and now you're moving during the motion.
I think they might have reset afterwards when they had the 2 on, but like it's also because Diami's in motion. I don't know if the ref knew who was supposed to be on.
Right.
The ref's like, yeah, you're good, because he probably assumes he's off and Brown's going to come and set on the line. Like I actually wanted to check this morning to see what the post-game commentary was from Terry to see, be like, was he going to be like, actually it was Diami, or Ron go, actually Diami was supposed to be the man who set on the line.
You can tell Terry's supposed to be on the ball.
It should be, but like, because he was so far off and moving, I was like, I guess maybe that's a possibility. But like clearly he should be on it. And like, I don't know, man, you played, I didn't. How hard is it to look down? The referee afterwards was like, he's got to be on the belt line of the center. How hard is it to look down the line of scrimmage and be like, oh, I'm behind the guy?
Well, and I was gonna say, like, from a mechanic standpoint, Taylor Heinicke guys just give it a beat, because it wasn't like Terry like walked out there. He like jogged to his spot. He looked to the official. He pointed. He realized he was off, and then the play is already going. It's like let your guys get up, like take a beat. You know what I mean? You want to
Yeah.
hurry, you want to rush, but like it's also like, is everyone set? Like, and I can check that. I can be like, hey Terry, like move up a little bit, right? You're off. And because like you can tell Terry knows he should be on the ball. You can tell, and it's one of those things. Like I've done it. You go to line up and you're checking with the official, and then you look back, you're like, whoa, I'm way farther off than I thought I was, right? Or I'm not in relation to the football where I thought it was, just because you kind of lose your orientation on the field. So I'm not, that
Right.
happens. But
Yeah.
I do think there are some other things logistically that could have happened that prevent that from being a penalty, right? And
Right.
that's not me like trying to be an apologist. That's just like good, sound football process, I think.
Right. And the thing is, everyone gets mad about the Curtis PI, but if they get that lined up correctly for any of the ways, any of the
Right.
fail safes that you mentioned, then that's not an issue. You were going to say something too on the OPI call on Dotson on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, so I think that to me, they are going to call that play because everyone runs that play, and so they are. You can tell like so this is a little behind the scenes. So every year there's a point of emphasis for the officials, and every year at the beginning of the season they have a meeting and they meet with every team. Official comes to training camp. It's like the first or second day, and they show you a video and they say these are the points of emphasis. So when they say this is a point of emphasis, like in the media, it is a big deal for the team. And it has been a point of emphasis this year. So when that's in your brain as an official, anything looks like a pick, right?
Right.
Everything looks like a pick. And I think it's, I'm sure Ron's going to be miffed today because basically Philly does this all the time. The reason they get away with it is because they do it from more condensed splits. So it looks more natural to the official, I think. But essentially, Jahan right there, right when the guy touches him, he needs to either outside release that or just turn around and ask for the football. Like that's because that's how they're going to call it. If you are in a position where you're squared up with a guy, even if he's initiating contact, it's going to be called because like it's so ingrained in the official's mind at this point, especially in that situation, to call those types of plays.
Yeah, and that's my issue with it is the official was looking for it in a way that to me is not fair to the offense. And like, look, those plays are hard for defense, and I understand trying to give the defense a chance. However, you've got to let a guy run a route, and Jahan's posture, like if Jahan reaches out and engages and is like, I'm trying to, engage in a blocking, movement, fine. But he doesn't. The DB is the one who initiates the contact. And by the way, it's also, you have to account for the fact that DBs can make contact within 5 yards. So if the DB is covering Jahan and makes contact within that 5 yards, like that's not on Jahan to like get out of the way. It's like, okay, if you want to pick yourself, go for it, man. Like they've got to correct that in how they're officiating it. I get why it's called. I don't think it's the worst call that's ever been had in the history of the league. It's not as egregious of a miss as the lack of PI on Samuel, for instance, later.
Yeah.
But that is a problem that the NFL has got to figure out, and they've got to get like some offensive and defensive coaches in a room and be like, all right, guys, tell me what you're trying to do here. What do you think is fair? And the rules committee's got to figure it out.
Also, I think the wording of the official post game is really interesting. The blocking posture, because if you watch it, you can tell that Jahan is trying to work for a pick as opposed to just running a route. And you know what I'm saying? You can tell by his demeanor. And I think that is, again, that blocking posture rule is so vague that it leaves so much to interpretation, because it does look like to me, when I'm watching it, you can tell, anybody can tell he's trying to pick the guy, right? So if he's running that more decisively, if he's running off the ball, working your release, he still gets the benefit of the pick, right? He still gets the benefit of the rub there. But again, the posture is the thing that I think sticks out to the official. It sticks out to me, like you can tell, like right away when you watch it, oh, he's trying to get a pick. And I think that's something that, again, when Philly does it, they do a really good job of running to a spot and then kind of turning around to face the quarterback. Even though they're blocking on the turn, like they're getting the pick on the turn,
right?
The posture is different, right? So I think that's a really interesting kind of point to pick up on. And something I just have to say right now, this is a non-issue if you hang on to the football. Like all this stuff is a non-issue. Hanging on the football in the red zone, hanging on the football backed up. Like as much as we want to talk about the officiating, there's so many other things. Those are the big ones. But if you just go down the play-by-play list, you're like,
so that's actually what I wanted to do next. Yeah. Is there's a couple of key plays that I wanted to talk about, and I'm gonna go to one that may not have even been on your radar, but little things, right? Chances to win the game, and then this one's a little one, then we'll get to some bigger ones. The play before Terry lines up illegally, Taylor scrambles.
Right.
Why does Jahan not block Thibodeau there?
Yeah.
If he just pushes him out of bounds, Heinicke scoots inside the pylon, none of this is an issue.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's not even like a breakdown here, but it's the idea that there are little plays to be made that can win you this game all over the place. And not to pick on Jahan, who was obviously phenomenal. They're not remotely in a position to win this game, to be competitive without Jahan Dotson. But there are some rookie moments, if you will, or some opportunities to make like winning plays. And from getting your body posture better so the officials don't call a pick to, buddy, you're out there looking to block someone, big number 5's right there. If you just push him out of bounds, if there's a collision there that Heinicke can slip inside, Taylor gets inside the pylon and scores, and none of this other stuff matters. And then you probably get a chance for redemption on the 2-point conversion. And it's little things like that where I'm going to harp on that, especially if I'm the coaching staff, but even as a talk show host, like I'm going to harp on that stuff more than I am the officiating. It's little plays, and then it's obviously the big plays that we can get into.
Yeah, that's something that was definitely on my radar. And again, that's a tough matchup, right? That's, if you're drawing stuff up on a chalkboard, you're not like, I want Jahan blocking Kayvon Thibodeau in space. You don't want that, right? Because Kayvon Thibodeau is, what is he? He's 6'5", he's 200 or 260 pounds, and Jahan is a slight 180 pounds. Like, he is not a big person. But to your point, if you just go over there and you're a speed bump for a half a second, like that's a touchdown probably, right? And so when you look at that, you can tell he kind of like, he does a little bit of quick mental math and says, this ain't for me. I'm not about this smoke, right? And you need a special guy. You need special receivers. Like Pierre Garçon is that type of guy. Josh Morgan, the guys that I played with, are those types of guys.
Terry McLaurin is that.
Terry McLaurin, right? They're going to, and Terry's not even kind of like, he makes those same calculations. So again, not with the same level of frequency maybe, but you see him, he's like, it's because you get paid to catch the football ultimately, right? And if you're concussed, if you're hurt because of a block, you don't get paid, right? So I understand that calculation, but in that situation, you'd like him to just kind of say, let me just get my hat across here. Let me get in the way and let this be a touchdown.
What you need is like when a running back reverses field and the quarterback gets in the way.
Yeah.
That's all you needed.
Yeah. Like, and I think there he's thinking he's getting in the way for a cutback inside, but really you just need to get in the way and like let Kayvon Thibodeau run into you. You can fall down. I don't care. But it gives the quarterback in this situation an opportunity to cut the ball back inside in a way that you pushing him from the side does not allow him to do. So I definitely agree. That play is like sneaky big. And again, that's not an ideal matchup. But if you want to go from good to great, from average to playoff caliber football team in a game where you made some mistakes, like that's one that could have potentially tipped the tide.
Obviously, biggest play of the game, Kayvon Thibodeau, strip sack. And really at the end of the day, like this game, I mentioned earlier, like situational football / Giants make big plays, Commanders don't. But also the best player on the field last night was Kayvon Thibodeau. And it wasn't even particularly close. The impact he made down in, down out, and then obviously the monster, as Tirico called it on the broadcast, the grand slam, the strip, sack, fumble, recovery, touchdown, is incredible. And, we can talk about Allen and Payne and how the defense performed in a second. Because ultimately, like, because of that strip sack, they only give up 13 points. Right? And that's a pretty good performance from the defense. But when you talk about making plays, they had Kayvon Thibodeau. And outside of like one big tackle for loss, Washington didn't have anybody that made any huge plays defensively. Yeah,
I agree. I think that's a little bit, at least to my eye, I think that's a little bit from Ron's game plan. I felt like this week, and I'd have to go back and chart it so don't take my word for it here. But
that's what the Wednesday pod's for.
Right. I'd have to chart this, but I think they were in a little bit more cover 2 quarters shell than they've been, right, on first and second down. And the only reason I can think that is because basically in their mind, the only way they lost the game is if they gave up a big play offensively. And I think that they were like, let's be a little bit more conservative. And it's not like they went totally turtle here, right? I'm talking a difference of maybe 10 to 12% in terms of coverage leaning, right? But I do think that you kind of, when you play that passive structure, you give Daniel Jones an opportunity to make some plays that aren't necessarily there. And, they didn't give up any big plays, really. I mean, there were situationally big plays like the 4th and 9 or whatever,
That's
but
such a killer.
outside of, and then the other thing about the Kayvon Thibodeau stuff, he gets four tackles for loss unblocked off of zone read action that obviously there was not a high level of comfort with by the offense. So to me, yes, he had an excellent game, right? But obviously his statistics are inflated tremendously, I think, by the fact that Scott and the offensive staff made the decision to kind of go with this zone read Philadelphia backfield action a couple times that, again, this team doesn't major in. And I think that's something that um, plays a huge role in kind of elevating Kayvon Thibodeau in terms of his production. Obviously, as a pass rusher, he did a great job. Leno had a tough day in some of those matchups, but I think that needs to be stated, right? Washington did some things that supported his production as opposed to detracted from it.
Do you know how many tackles Kayvon Thibodeau had last night?
Like 10. He had a whole bunch, I bet.
12, including 9 solo tackles.
Yeah.
That's
And he made
ridiculous for a defensive end.
And he made some plays like in space. Like he ran down the screen to Terry. He ran down Taylor on that boot action. Love that play call, by the way, by Scott on the boot.
Yeah.
Ran him down, tackle on the goal line on Terry. Like he did some stuff that was very, very special and showed up, and again shows you what a top 5 pick, top 7 pick should look like. So
Right. And it actually had me thinking about, like, in some ways it almost feels karmic for Ron and Jack and everyone's like, we're playing fine without Chase. And it's like, you're playing great, but like, that's why you drafted that dude number 2 overall,
Right.
is to make plays like that. And I'm not saying that Chase is necessarily ready to come back. I'm not his doctor. I'm not his trainer. I'm not anything. But like, just there's a reason why there's the consternation around Chase Young. And it's not that he's a guy who's going to come in and do everything right all the time, but he is the guy that can do that. And they're missing that. John and Duran make big plays, and it's kind of part of the formula. Those guys have to make tackles for loss. Those guys have to bat a ball down or two throughout the course of the game. And look, James Smith-Williams was awesome last night. That dude was everywhere. But can Chase make the superhuman play, the Kayvon Thibodeau play, that can help change a game and score? And that's kind of what they're hoping. That's why they're holding out hope to get him back. And we'll see, if Ron said after the game last night, like, oh yeah, we anticipate him playing this year. Like, we'll see what kind of work he does Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like, we'll see. But it is kind of a reminder of what a special player like that can do when they're healthy, when they're right, and why there's so much attention and consternation around Chase Young beyond just the obvious of the draft position. What else from this game, offensively, defensively, that stands out?
I think you brought up a good point about the lack of pressure generally. And I think, again, we talk about the Giants' game plan, and their wrinkles, and we've been talking about it seemingly for a month now. And one of the things that they did a great job of is they didn't do any play action pass. It was all predominantly quick game from the gun, 2-3 step drops, getting the ball out of their hands. They did a really, really nice job of that, and I think that, again, you talk about negating this defensive line and teams that have had success doing that. They kind of lean heavily on quick game, and it's not even quick game. It's like kind of a pseudo hybrid. It's like it's a 2-step from the gun. So it plays like a 5-step drop, but you're getting the ball quicker and you're getting that spot quicker. So again, I like that innovation by them. They also did some stuff in the run game in terms of taking advantage of the defensive tackles, Payne and Allen, from like a wham standpoint. Obviously, this is a penetrating defense. So they're bringing tight ends back. They're trapping them with guards, and that led to probably 3 or 4 big runs by Saquon late in the game. So they came ready to play, on a short week of prep, pretty much. Not a short week, but a normal week of prep as opposed to the bye week prep that this team had. So, they deserve a lot of credit for that. And as much as we want to say that they kind of, mitigated the effectiveness of the defense, really outside of that one really long drive, I thought the defense, and even on that drive, I'm going to do a breakdown on this. I think this week we'll see how the plays turn out, but like just the chess match between Jack and Daniel and Kafka and all these different guys, like, it was really compelling. I thought from like a micro play level, Jack is in cover 2 invert on this play. It leads to incomplete pass, right? Oh, then Jackson cover 2 invert. They have a cover 2 invert beater called. It's a completion, and just like the constant kind of chess match between those two sides. And obviously we talked about how well coached the Giants were as a football team. And that really, I think, showed up in a nice, that scouting showed up nicely here. And I think as much as Jack's going to get heated up today, I think he did a nice job, and I think they just made some more plays. And that's a frustrating conclusion to come to, but ultimately, like, they made more plays than we did. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to be super critical of the defense outside of the last drive where, like, if you're the defense that you want to be, dominant, top 5 in the league, you got to bow up. And Saquon just runs it right down your throat, right at, by the way, the strength of your defense. But at the end of the day, like, they gave up 288 yards. Like, they gave up less than 300 total yards on 62 plays. The Giants were 2 of 10 on third down. They averaged 4.6 yards a play. Like,
which is not
160
good.
Passing yards. Like, the defense was, generally speaking, fine. But Washington offensively just gets so far away from who they are. They lose the time of possession battle, not by much. It's 30-30 to 29-30. So they lose it 30 seconds under 500, if you will. And they still put up 387 yards of offense, which is not a bad day. It's not like an amazing day, but I don't know, man. They rushed for 159, and I just think they got away from the formula that works for them. Specific to Taylor, how do you think he played as we were constantly in this? Well, if he doesn't play better, maybe they'll go back to Carson hellscape of a loop.
Yeah. I think Taylor, on a down-to-down basis, did some really good things. And I think he misses some stuff, but everyone misses stuff.
Yep.
And that's not just like that's not missing throws necessarily. That's just missing reads and kind of getting the ball out of your hand, kind of predetermining stuff. And that happens. I'd say there's probably, how many dropbacks did he have? Do you have that in front of you?
He threw the ball 29 times. I don't know how many dropbacks. So probably like 30, 31 dropbacks if he scrambled a couple times, got sacked a couple times.
Yeah, so I'd say 5 of those probably misses. But again, it's not a bad ratio. I really just think the thing that shows up for Taylor is just not taking care of the football, right? Not taking care of the football in the 2 fumbles. One of those I don't think is his fault. I think the one with Kayvon Thibodeau is probably not his fault. If I was going to allocate blame, I think that's more of an offensive line thing. The one in the red zone is absolutely his fault. He needs to take care of the football there in that situation. And I think also, I think people forget on the play before that, he almost throws a pick. Snap's a little high. He almost throws an interception. So again, like I said, he did some things that I was very impressed with. Another thing that I found a tiny bit irksome to me anyway is, I think, like I said, I think Taylor did, he was Taylor. It was a very Taylor game. He was probably going to grade, I'd give him out of 100, probably like a 55. He did some good stuff, did some bad stuff, and did some stuff that changed the complexion of the game positively and negatively. Very Taylor. The thing that I was kind of contemplating was if you're taking a shot on a flea flicker, why aren't you taking shots to Jahan or Terry? On the flea flicker, they took one. They ran that post corner concept to Diami, and it's kind of like, you've got 2 guys who are excellent at that, and why are we throwing the ball to the 3rd string wide receiver? I know he's got a skill set. I understand that,
right? But to me, Diami is the guy that you try to get 1-on-1 on their 4th corner, and hey man, go to town.
But that's what I'm saying. He's lined up as your Z receiver and some of that stuff. He's your primary guy. It's not like he's in the slot running a go the way that Miami lines up Tyreek Hill sometimes, or the way that Green Bay lines up Christian Watson. It's
or the way that they got the 2 touchdowns against Tennessee.
Right. It's like he's the outside receiver running a post, and it's that's it's a Z receiver. If I'm gonna have my Z receiver do it, I want Terry to do it.
Right. I think honestly, that's the criticism that rises above all else is they were too cute offensively in this game. That's personnel and even there's the key 3rd and 3 that everyone lost their mind, including me on, where they give the ball back to Curtis, and it's at the time Robinson's averaging 6.8 a carry. Just run a run play that Brian Robinson runs, where he's the running back and has been getting you nearly 7 yards a carry. That if they had just done that, they insulate Taylor more. They don't get away some of this other silly stuff that happens. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that Scott put into this, but at the end of the day, I think it's on Ron on some level too to be like, all right, Scott, tell me what you're thinking this week. Let's minor in some of that stuff. I like where your head's at, but make sure we don't lose track of us. And I think that, Scott Turner is a 40-something-year-old man who's very capable of having that thought on his own. He's been around the game long enough and is a very smart offensive mind and should know better. But it's also on the head coach ultimately. And I'm not trying to just throw random criticism at Ron, but I think Ron's been good about that this year. Ron has, and Ron's talked about this and Scott's talked about this of how Scott still is a relatively young play caller. And, one of the things that Ron has to do as a head coach is coaches. And the ability to rein Scott in a little bit at times and be like, hey man, just do us. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, you're good call. And that they lost that in this game. And that's to me, probably the biggest reason why they lost the game.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I think you saw flashes of Scott before probably the Minnesota game, a guy that, an offense that was still trying to find its identity, got away from what they wanted to be. I mean, you articulated that really well. I don't need to rehash any of that, but I agree. I think, when you look at what they were doing, it didn't feel like the same team. It felt like and I'm not going to say that. We'll save that for another time when me and you were talking, but I agree.
If you go back and watch the film and whatever you were going to say, you still feel after watching it in full, we can say it on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll go with that. Or maybe not, because I don't know what you said, but I'm going to find out.
Well, I'll tell you after this.
Well, the good thing for me is I don't have to wait much longer because that's your instant reaction podcast. We will obviously dive much deeper into all of this on Wednesday. I'll be on the radio if you're listening to this at some point in the middle of the day, as we're going to turn this right around. I'll be on the radio 3 o'clock for the Hoffman show. Start with my first and 10 observations in the first segment right at 3 p.m. We'll be back Wednesday with another edition of Take Command. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening or watching right now. Full episodes available at youtube.com/@Odyssey Sports. For Logan, I'm Craig, and we'll see y'all on Wednesday for Take Command. Thanks for checking out this clip of Take Command. Or maybe it wasn't a clip. Maybe it was the whole thing. You can always get the whole thing. Let's change the graphic. Ready? Boom. Producing on the fly. Bang. Wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, right here on YouTube. You can also check us out not only at youtube.com/@CraigHoffman, but, Logan, the Odyssey Sports page is live soon. That's very exciting.
That'll be fun. I don't care where you subscribe, as long as you do subscribe to one of these platforms. That would be very helpful for us.
Yeah, do it. Or Logan's going to come to your house, and he's going to be a sift blocker and knock you over.
Cut the legs out from under you, right?
You can't even do that on the field, but we can do it in real life.